Hello everyone, and thanks for joining me. What I'd like to do in this video is walk through the Hello World example from the Luxonos documentation. And what I'm going to do is build up a pictorial representation of what this Hello World example is doing. And I'm also going to borrow some code from another example, which not only puts a bounding box like you can see here in the example video, but it's also going to tell you what label was predicted and then the confidence of that label. So if you wanted to just walk through the Hello World example, which is actually really good, you can go to this URL. And that will tell you how to install the necessary libraries and walk through the code block by block, which is what I'm going to do, but I'm going to show you then a pictorial representation of what that means. And if you want to look at the Hello World example that I actually created, which is built upon a couple of their examples, you can find this on my GitHub repo at the URL above. And if you go there, if you go into the tutorials, and there'll be a Hello World file, which is the bulk of it is from the Hello World example from the Luxonos site with a couple extra features built into it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So at the top we have the imports, and you'll see this when you look at the particular example. We have a label map, and these are the labels from the Mobilenet SSD. This isn't part of the original Hello World example, so that we can select the actual predicted label. Let's take a look and start in the main section. As we talked about before, we always create a pipeline, so there's a processing pipeline that happens on the oak, and we have to define nodes and link those nodes together to define the actual pipeline. So on line 31, that's where we define a pipeline. And then on lines 34 to 36, this is where we're going to create the camera node. And that's going to be the first thing that we're going to add to the pipeline. And then we call a couple of properties on that, like setting the size to 300 by 300, which is what the Mobilenet needs. Next, on lines 39 to 43, we're going to create the MobileNetDetection network. So this is going to be the actual machine learning algorithm that's going to take in frames and try to figure out what's inside of it. And on line 46, this is where we're going to take the preview output of the color camera and then link it to the input of the MobileNetDetection network node. And that's how we're linking these now together. So the output of the color camera, the preview output specifically, goes into the input of the MobileNetDetection network node. Then on line 49 to 52, we're going to create the X-Link out. And this node is the node that takes in any kind of an input and then sends that to a queue on the host computer. And we're going to call this X-Link out node RGB. And then on line 52, we're again going to take the color camera preview and we're going to link that to the input of the X-Link out that we called RGB. And that's how we're going to get frames from the color camera into our host computer. The next thing we're going to do on line 55 is create another X-Link out. We're going to call this one NN for the neural network. And we are going to connect the neural networks out into the input of the X-Link out for the neural network. Then on line 63, we go into this with block because we're going to create this virtual device that represents the oak device, and we're going to tell it what pipeline it should be executing. So then the next thing we do on line 64 and 65 is we actually get a reference to those output queues. So when you create the X-Link out nodes, it creates a queue in your host computer. And that's how you're going to be able to read messages then from the oak. And then in line 70, we go into this while forever loop where we're going to try to read messages out. And then in line 74, we're going to actually look at the RGB queue and pull out one frame. And then we're going to pull out one of the detections that the neural network found from the NN queue. And then what we do is we take the frame, the raw frame that we got from the camera, and the detection that we got from the MobileNet detection network. And we use those two things to actually draw on the video frame what was the actual detected objects. And that we see on lines 80. So as long as we got a frame, and then on line 81, as long as the neural network found some of the objects within that frame, we're going to then, for each of the detected objects, we're going to go into this loop. Now the first thing we do is we look at the detection object has things like an X-min and a Y-min and an X-max and a Y-max. And those are all normalized. So we have to then send in the frame so we can get the shape of the frame and then denormalize the X-mins, Y-mins, X-max, and Y-max so we can get the bounding box of the detected object. Then we just call cv2.rectangle, passing in the frame we want it to write on, and then the size of that bounding box and the color. The next thing we want to do on lines 89 is we're going to write what the actual detected label is. And one of the properties of the detection class that comes back is a label attribute. And so we're going to pull that out. That's an index, and that's why we have the label map. So we're going to take that detection label index and then look up the actual string value in the label map. And then we're just going to write that on the frame with a cv2.putText. And as far as the confidence of that prediction, we can pull that from the detection as well with the .confidence property. And we're going to use a cv2.putText on the frame we read from the color camera node, and we're going to write that onto the frame. And then on line 97, we will just show that. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So we'll start this up. And there we have it. So now it's running through that pipeline. The color camera is sending these frames into the MobileNet detection network. The color camera has an X-link out that's passing that to the host computer, so we can read all these frames that you're seeing right now. And then the MobileNet detection network is sending all the predictions or the detections through another X-link out into another queue on the host computer. And then we're going to combine those so that you can see that one, it's detected me as a person with 99% confidence. But we can also have it show that there's a bottle here. Let's get those on the other side. So it's doing all this in an incredibly high frame rate and then sending the frames and the detections over to the host computer, which is my Mac. So that's a walkthrough of the hello world with me adding, just showing you the label person in this case, and the confidence level that that's the detected class. So that's it. That was a quick walkthrough. Thanks for joining me.